Hey there, YouTube. Good morning. We're going to talk about triggers. Got a couple of interesting questions here. Ben, as someone who goes back and forth on different platforms, do you ever find yourself sending an extra round inadvertently in a string when going from a long trigger pull gun, such as a striker fired, to a short trigger pull gun like a 1911? I was going back and forth with a staccato and a Glock at work, and the reset on the Glock is far more forgiving. Does what you said about not riding the reset pretty much eliminate this from happening? Yes. So let me just bring people up to speed. So, uh, if you ride the reset, and that would be boom, the gun goes off. Now it's my intent to minimize the travel of my finger, and I let out till typically people who cue in on that audible click, they hear that reset, they're like, oh, okay, and then they want to start stacking up pressure again just up to the wall, prep the trigger, and then press back through. So it's part of their thinking is they're minimizing the travel of their finger. That's one thing. And then the other thing is when you're prepping the trigger, you're putting positive pressure on the trigger, but you don't have the intent for the gun to go off. Now, I'm not saying that's bad necessarily, but that's not really something I ever do if I think about it. As soon as I start rolling pressure onto the trigger, it's my intent that the gun goes off, like in the very near future. So I don't have this issue that a lot of people have that when they switch to a lighter trigger and they start, they get a staccato, for example, and they start prepping it, you know, then they'll prep it a little too much, a little too early, and they'll send around. I mean, that's the thing that you'll see. But that's not an issue for me because it's like I'm not a trigger reset rider. I'm not really a conscious um, reset guy. Not so much. There's another good question in here. I want to pull that one up because I think it makes sense. Man, it's not my morning. I have to. Here we go. What do you need to feel what's going on if you're just slapping it and not prep and pressing? All right, so that's actually a pretty fair question. So I was talking a lot about the feel of triggers yesterday, getting in tune with the feel of it. But at the same time, I'm not saying this is true, but people have the perception that I slap the trigger. Whenever I pull the trigger, I just slap it back. I'm not doing that, but I'm also not prep and pressing. I'm not doing either of those things. What I like is a controlled press. So if the targets are up close in my face, yeah, I'll just sweep my finger back through the trigger and pull it. But as the targets get further and more difficult, then I'm pulling the trigger slower, the pace of the shooting is slower, and I'll pay attention to pressing through, the take up and the wall. I'll just kind of do this rolling break right through that stuff. I'm not prepping and like stopping the motion of my finger and then pressing through. I don't like that, but I do like a rolling break that I do like a different speed or a different aggression based on how difficult I perceive the targets to be. So feel of the trigger, it's not that it's the most important thing, but I can definitely feel what's going on with the trigger, especially as the shooting gets more difficult. Again, because I'm gonna take care to consciously pull the trigger straight, even though I'm not, the device that I'm using in my head is not prepping and pressing. The objective's the same. It's like, hey, pull the trigger a little bit carefully, dummy, so that you don't push the shot sideways. Anyway, that should do it, guys. There we go. A little talk about triggers. Questions, comments, put it below.